What is environmental education? My initial thoughts, some readings, and some first-hand experience. Thanks to David Orr's bold statement, I learned all education is environmental education. Looking back at our blogs, I can see how my initial thoughts and impressions have changed, and how I have learned or unlearned through this process. My first blog, I thought about what the environment meant to me. I described it as an escape and a way to unplug, and while this can be part of the environment, it is so much more. It is full of resources, and it's almost like it's its own person. It is made up of everything it needs to be taken care of. I'm constantly left asking myself what the environment means to me, and I don't think I'll ever have a clear answer, as it is continuously changing. It is when the earth starts to wake up from her well-deserved rest and renews her gifts to the people. My thought on this quote was that the earth is always giving to the people and that people need to give back to the earth as well. My second blog post was about taking the leap. Of course, thinking about recycling, I thought I always recycle. I'm totally helping the environment. Of course, a big part of this class is unlearning. Through my unlearning, I realized that while recycling is good, there is so much more I can do and even improve on my own recycling. I could recycle more things that I'm not recycling or stop recycling things like plastic bags that I just learned actually can't be recycled. I'd mentioned in my blog post that I wanted to help with the end of deforestation. Casey had commented and asked how I planned on doing that, and I had always thought that I wanted a cabin in the woods, and now my thoughts that are not something that I actually need. And when I go camping, to be careful not to break any branches that are attached to the trees and not to be wasteful for things that have already been cut down. The woods are the same as the countless springs before this one. The citizens of Maple Nation are starting to wake up. This made me think of that people are starting to realize that they can and do more in terms of context of working to stop climate change. We know that this is a huge process and needs everyone to work together to help change this. It made me realize that I can't control other people, but can control what I do and how I can help it. For journal number 3, and talking about embodiment, I initially thought that embodiment in the context of climate change had to do with stillness, but now it is more to do with our bodies. Through our Embodying Eco-Literacy project, I was able to start to think about my body and how it felt. I was able to start to walk more from parking farther away and was getting more exercise while also not polluting the air as much. For our ways of knowing, it means that we have to constantly be changing and learning and unlearning, never being satisfied with where we are, just working to improve our planet. Journal number 4, I talked about going to the water treatment plant and how we are lucky to have such clean water when other people don't have the same privileges as us. It made me realize that we need to do more. Me specifically need to do more to help not be so wasteful of water and to help turn off the taps while I'm at my home when I don't need them running. I discussed in journal number 5 the experiences I have had with environmental education. I discussed how I had taken a outdoor education class that went to northern Saskatchewan where I actually got to see stone paintings, which made me think of the historical roots and the First Nations people that had lived there before us. It made me think of how often things are destroyed because of people and how they aren't taken care of and appreciated as well as they should be, myself included. The quote that made me think is, because wilderness and nature are called into being by the meanings given to them, are constituted by their own representations, they are human creations and thus subject to the whims and politics of human activity. Again, going back to how we don't appreciate some of these things. Creative journal number 6 is all about inquiry. Little did I know, inquiry was actually a theme throughout the course. Every reading and discussion we had throughout the semester, we had us asking questions, reflecting, investigating, discussing, creating, and then going back through the cycle and bouncing around them. Doing that blog made me realize how it was such a huge theme in our class. The blogs and readings made me feel vulnerable, but also allowed me to express my feelings and thoughts in a way I saw them and interpreted them. This process also shattered my previous thoughts and ways that I saw the environment. It made me realize how unaware I was and made me realize that I didn't care before, and now that's all changed. Awareness was another huge theme in the class for me. For me, everything we discussed made me aware of my actions and my surroundings, specifically our Embodying Eco-Literacy project and our EE philosophies. And being aware of the ways I thought that I was helping the environment in context of climate change, to unlearning many things that I didn't even realize I was doing that wasn't good. For example, the number of lectures I printed off just to recycle them at the end of the semester. My With the EE philosophy I started to come to embrace was the genuine fruit leaf, which says is a philosophical lifestyle based on experiences of freedom in nature and this spiritual connectedness with the landscape. This spoke to me in different ways. I started to think of the indigenous people and their ways of life and thought about stillness that we had practiced and made me feel more connected to the land and in spiritual ways. In decolonizing encounters, I thought about Ho's article. One quote that stood out to me said, "In each encounter, I am pushed, perplexed, softened, hardened, and dare I say, decolonized." This goes back to our conversation about the benefits and advantages of building forts and how it can make us see how they hold stories and resources, but how they are also moving resources from their home. I think of our field trip to the Regina Indian Industrial School site. I thought of how this made me feel walking through the mud and how I was getting on my shoes, but how children were buried without proper acknowledgement and how the mud on my shoes really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. As well, when they were thinking about the soil and working with the worms, how we thought, ew, gross, but how we should have been thinking it was interesting. Within different historical cultural contexts, different voices have been calling for actions that might also need to be added to the twin goal of decolonization and rehabilitation.